Oh, thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everyone, for joining me tonight. Yeah, these, I'm not going to lie, smell so delicious while they're baking in your oven. I would suggest even a double batch. So, because it takes a little bit longer than 40 minutes to make cinnamon buns, we're going to try and do, we'll get as far as we can. I've done 2 doughs ahead of time just so that you can see what it's supposed to look like. So, I do have one finished dough, and I'll put it here. So I've let this proof for about an hour and a half at room temperature. And then so just so that you can see exactly what it looks like before you put it into the oven. So I just want to make sure that you guys can see. But you'll see that all the sides are touching nicely. You'll see that it's, when you indent, the indent will stay. That's a sure sign that they're ready to go into the oven, okay? All right. Okay. Tanya, can I leave that for you?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
350 for about 25 minutes? Okay. All right, so let's get started on our dough. So I'm just going to use the KitchenAid bowl. If you don't have a stand mixer, don't worry, you can do this all by hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in our milk. So the biggest key here is that you don't want to overheat your milk. It should feel like just tepid bath water. So not too hot. You don't want to kill your yeast. Yeast is a living organism. So it will, you can kill it, okay? So again, even if you just want to measure with your finger, you don't really have to measure 110 on a thermometer if you don't have one. So it should just feel like a little bit cooler than bath water, okay? So we're going to sprinkle our yeast on top. And this one is just a traditional quick rise yeast. Or traditional yeast. The granules are a little bit bigger. If you have, let's say, if you have a quick rise yeast, you'll find that the granules are a little bit smaller and that it actually has a little bit needs less time for rising. Okay, but both are totally fine. So we've got our yeast and our milk. Next, we're going to add in our sugar, and this is the food for our yeast. And then I've got 1 yolk and 1 full egg. So we're going to put that in there. Important to have these all at room temperature, your eggs especially. Okay, and then I've got some melted butter here too. So I've just cooled this a little bit. And the reason you want to have your eggs at room temperature and your butter just, I would say, slightly cooled. Maybe mine was a bit too cool. You don't want it to cook your eggs when you're adding it into your mix here. Okay? So we're just going to mix this up. Okay? And then we will add our flour. So the recipe calls for bread flour. If you don't have bread flour, that's okay. All-purpose works just as well. The texture might be a little bit different, but I'd say just go for it. Okay, so the important thing is here, you don't want to add in too much flour. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take my spoon, I'm just going to kind of incorporate a little bit of air in here. Because if I was just to go and scoop in, I would actually have an inaccurate measure of my flour because it's quite compressed in the container I have it in. So we're just going to do the sweep here. Okay, so we're going to take 3 cups. You can use a butter knife if you want to, but I just use my spoon. So the trick here, the reason we're putting our salt in with our flour is that we don't want our salt to touch our yeast. Because like I was saying, the yeast is a living organism. And the salt can actually attack the yeast. Okay, so we're going to sprinkle the salt just on top. And I'm just going to give this a stir with my spoon until it's just roughly mixed. This is going to be a nice soft dough. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at this point. And if you have, if you're continuing to do this by hand, I would suggest mixing it just a touch more and then kneading it onto a floured surface. Okay. All right. So today we're going to use our dough hook. Okay, and then we're going to knead it till it all comes together. So when you're using a dough hook, you never want to have it on full speed. Okay, so you probably want to have it just on low, and then you can see our dough is starting to come together. So what we're doing here is not only just mixing our ingredients, but we are developing the gluten. I'm just going to turn it up a touch. And then we'll knead it a little bit by hand on the counter. Is everyone doing okay? Good?
It looks like you have a lot of people making the cinnamon buns at home.
That's good.
I think people maybe have already gotten their dough prepared.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this off, and I'm going to just knead a little bit by hand so that you guys can see a little bit better. Keep your mixer out because we'll need it a little bit later for our cream cheese icing. Okay. Okay, I just have a little bit of flour here. Take this off the dough hook. A nice rich dough. You can tell by the way it feels because of the egg. It's nice and soft. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little flour down. So when you are kneading, so basically what you're doing is you're going to be using this part of your palm and you're pushing and then bringing your dough back in. So pushing and bringing the dough back in.
So there's a question for you here, Chef.
Okay.
If you don't have a mixer, do you really need to knead for 8 minutes?
No. No. And I'll show you. You just want your dough to be smooth and pliable. So you'll be able to feel it, Mary Ellen. So it will be still like nice and like soft, but when you'll know it's done when you can, it's not quite done yet because see how it's tearing when I'm gently pulling. So that means just have to keep on kneading. So here we're just building the gluten. So I'm just going to knead a bit, but not for 8 minutes. Although a good workout. It's like I have a friend that used to make bread, and she used to knead it exactly 100 times. I always used to ask her if she ever lost count. That's a lot of counting. Okay. And you can start to feel in your dough too that you're creating a lot of body here. So it's starting to feel a little bit more firm. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so I think we're pretty good. It's nice and flexible. Can everybody see? So I'm kind of pulling. It's not ripping, so I think we're good to go. So I'm just going to use my hands, and you can do this if you want to on the counter if you have your hands like this. And basically, you're just using the friction from your table, and you're creating a nice tight ball. So then you can see on the bottom that there's not much of a seam. Okay.
Tracy's writing in that she needed hers by hand, but learning more by watching you.
Aw.
Tracy, I recognize your name. Are you Tracy from Hippie Pops? You can write in the. Yes, yeah. So Tracy, we have another chef joining us. So Hippie Pops is on Kerr Street. I'm sure people watching are familiar with them, but they make it's like a gourmet popsicles. I know popsicles isn't the right term. I think it was like pailletas or something, or paletas, but very good.
They are super good. The pina colada,
Yeah.
yum, yum, yum.
Thanks for joining us, Trace.
Okay, so when we've got our dough all set, we're going to let it rest and double in size for more, I would say about an hour or so. Now you can use olive oil in your pan. I just have some Pam spray here, so I'm just gonna use that. So what's important here, so you take your dough, put it on the bottom, just kind of rub a little bit on the top, and then flip it over. Okay, so the reason we're doing that is we're gonna coat the top of the dough ball with a little bit of the spray or the fat, whatever you've got going on in there, so it doesn't crust, so that when it does expand, it has the ability to expand without it getting crusty bits on the top. Okay, and then I'm just gonna cover this with a piece of plastic wrap. Okay, so it looks like this. So you want to put it in a warm, draft-free place, and then you'll see that it does actually double in size. So it looks like this. Okay, so this one I made at about 3:30 today, and it's just been out on the counter since. Okay, so this is a great dough because you can even make it the day before and then start working from this area, this step. Okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions about this so far? I didn't do most of these things, but I'm sure it will. Tracy, I think it will be brilliant. The ingredients are good. It will taste good. Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna put this one to rise.
So how long would that be rising for, Chef?
Depends on the temperature of your house, but I would say between an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay. Can you over rise it, or is it best to defer to 90 minutes?
I would say at least double in size. That's fine. If it goes a little bit over, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Everybody's good? Grace, how are you doing? Good. Okay. All right. So moving on to some fun stuff.
Chef, does it collapse if you wait for too long?
It shouldn't. I mean, it's not like you're gonna let it sit there for 3 days or anything like that, but it's
Yeah.
but even if you let it rise or double in size in the fridge overnight, then that's totally fine too. Because with the coldness, actually, it slows down the yeast.
I'm just noticing that Oma is in the room, and I haven't changed her name yet, but Oma is asking if you could leave the dough overnight.
Aw, thank you, Oma. You could leave it. Yeah, you could leave it out overnight. I guess it depends really on how cold you keep your house. So with the tray of the finished cinnamon buns, I actually just had that in my fridge overnight, and then you just bring it to room temperature, let it rise for about 40 minutes to an hour, and then they're ready for the oven. I would probably keep the dough in the fridge just because it has eggs in it, if you're gonna keep it overnight. Does that help, Oma?
Thank you, Chef.
Okay. So in here, I've got some brown sugar and cinnamon, so I'm just gonna mix it up. It seems like a lot of work for very little amount of cinnamon buns. That's why I always suggest to make a double batch, because these freeze really well. So once you roll them and put them into your pan, then that is when you would pop them into the freezer. Okay, there we go. So if you have brown sugar that's going a bit dry like mine, can you see? A great trick is just to put in a piece of bread or even a slice of apple, and that will help keep it moist. Okay. Are you guys ready for the fun part? All right. So we're just going to take out our dough. And I'm just going to put some flour on my work surface. Okay. And then we're just going to punch it out. So nice. I'm going to try and keep it in a rectangle. So this looks great, guys. And then you can use your rolling pin of choice.
A cool tip in the chat. Mary Ellen uses marshmallows in her brown sugar.
Oh, that is a good tip.
Very cool.
I never would have thought marshmallows.
No, I had to ask if it worked before I shared it. Didn't know if you're just doing it for fun.
Okay, so we're just gonna roll it. I think it's about 9 by 14, they say. So you can just eyeball it, or if you want to be exact, you could get out a ruler. But I think we'll just eyeball it. Now, some people like big cinnamon buns. Some people like ones that are a little bit smaller. So you can decide that when you're cutting. Okay, so I think that looks about right. Okay, so my dough is about, I would say about maybe half an inch thick to maybe a quarter inch maybe. Let's say. Can everybody see? So about this thick. Okay, so nice flexible dough. This looks perfect. Okay, so then I've got about a quarter cup of unsalted butter. If you have just salted butter, then that's fine too. But I like to use unsalted myself. You could use vegan butter if you prefer. Now you can use a spatula, a knife, a spreader. I just like to go in with my hands. And I like to rub the butter right into my dough. But you want to make sure that when you are working this dough, you want to leave some space at the end here where you don't put any butter, okay? Because this is where we're going to seal our dough. So we're going to leave about maybe about half an inch from the bottom.
Well, you're rubbing that in, Chef. So I heard today update in regards to COVID vaccines in Halton. So I think we're at 55 now that you can register. So if you haven't already, be sure to register for your COVID vaccine. If you are eligible when it's your turn, certainly encourage folks to do that.
Perfect. Thanks, Daniel. That's a good reminder. Okay, so now we've got our butter on top of our dough. Okay, and then we'll just sprinkle in our brown sugar cinnamon mix. And if you're a huge cinnamon lover, you can always add a little bit more. Some people I know like a little bit of cardamom mixed in with theirs as well. And it gives it a little bit of a different taste. And then we're just going to kind of rub this into the butter. So we kind of want to make it stick. And I like to make sure to go all the way to the edges because you don't want to be the person that gets the piece with little filling. Okay.
This is when you insert your suggested serving. chef, there's got to be some type of restriction. Like this has to be one of the more unhealthy things that we've prepared on here.
Yeah, it's not healthy at all.
We've just massaged butter and sugar into bread.
Oh,
And we're
it's
about to cake it with cheese and icing.
yeah, I can't really see very much nutritional value at all in this.
Cinnamon buns, part of a healthy lifestyle by the
That's
town of
right.
Oakville.
Everything in moderation. Okay, everybody good? All right. So when you're starting to roll, I like to bring a little piece over, and I like just to do a gentle push. So we want to make sure that we have a nice, tight first roll. Okay. So what you can do now is you can kind of do like a pull back and then a roll. So a pull back and a roll, very gently, a pull back and a roll. Does that make sense? So a pull back and a roll, pull back and a roll, pull back and a roll. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, pull back and a roll. And then you can adjust the sides as you go. Like if you need to make a perfectly squared off rectangle, I just felt like Martha Stewart there. Okay, so then we're at this point here. I'm just gonna get a little bit of water in my bowl here. Okay. So I'm just going to wet the edges here. Okay, not too much water. You just want it enough to create a seal. So then we're just going to roll it onto the seal. And I'm just gonna give it kind of a little push down so that it's secure. And then if you wanted to, you could also pinch. Ooh la la. Okay. And then I'm just going to do a gentle roll. How's everyone doing? Okay? Looking good? Okay. So when you have your log, what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to roll it just to make sure that it's even. Okay, so that you don't have like a big bulge here and it's small here. You want to make sure that it's nice and even in thickness. Okay?
Cass, that looks awesome. I don't know who from the Hallman family's rolling right now, but that looks great.
Oh, awesome. Grace, is that you? Awesome job. Looking good. And then ready for a little bit of water before you seal, right? There you go. Perfect. Bravo.
Kylie, are you letting your dough rest? You're being surprisingly non-risque right now. Usually we've seen you covered in flour or something by now.
I think Kylie's a pro.
I think I saw her head nod. I think she's allowing the rest. We'll see it on your Instagram. Bacon life.
Perfect. Okay. So now when you are ready to cut, there's a couple ways you can do this. Some people like to use a bench scraper, so you can actually just cut like so. Some people actually have used dental floss. I personally just like to use a serrated knife. I find it pretty easy. Now you'll see at the ends, it doesn't have a lot of filling usually. So sometimes I like just to take the ends off, okay, because that's not a fun piece to get.
About how skinny would you say that is, Chef?
I don't know. My measurements are never really
Maybe
great.
3 inches, 4 inches?
No,
Yes.
I would say 3 inches max. But you can make them bigger if you want to just do larger cinnamon buns. I like to make mine small, so if I have two, I don't feel as gross or guilty. Okay, so I've just cut the ends off. Now, there's a couple different pans you can use too. So it depends on how many you cut. But you can use a springform pan, a round pan, or a cake pan, works great. I just have a hotel pan that I might use for these ones. Or I also have, oh, look at this, guys. So Tanya took these out of the oven for me, and don't these look great? So this is just a Pyrex dish, and it's, I believe it's a 7 by 11. So you can really use whatever you'd like to use. But I'm going to use the bigger pan, and I'm just going to spray. And if you don't want to use a spray, you can always just rub it with some butter. Okay. So now what you're going to do is you're going to slice them about an inch thick. Okay. So I like to use a serrated knife and just holding your piece here, and just a slow back and forth motion. Okay. Nice and easy. Don't need to rush.
Watching you cut into your fingers is remarkably stressful.
Sorry, Daniel.
No.
Okay. So I wasn't counting. So then we're just going to put them into our pan. So you'll see that there's the seam part. When you're putting them into your pan, I like just to point them into the center. Okay? That way, if they unravel, then they're just unraveling into the center, not on the outsides. Okay. All right. So here we go. So we're going to put them like this. This pan might be a little bit on the big side. You want them to be a little bit closer. I'd say like even like this. Here, I'm just going to put it in this pan. I wanted to see the difference. Okay. Bear with me for a sec while I experiment.
It's okay. Essentially, you want them close enough so they rise into each other, right? So it's all soft.
You got it.
Yeah.
I think this is going to work a lot better.
It's like making dinner rolls or something.
That's right. There we go. That's perfect. Okay. Everybody see that? All right. So then what we're going to do with this one is we are just going to cover it with plastic wrap, and then we're going to let it rise. So probably about another 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes. And then once they do rise, then you'll see them pressed all into each other, just like how we saw them with the initial pan. Okay? All right. Okay, so let's move this.
It's a lot of waiting, Chef. I see why people buy the Pillsbury rolls or something.
Yes, it's, you know what, it's a lot of work, but it's really gratifying work. And they taste better than the Pillsbury, I can guarantee you.
Oh, definitely. It's, preparing and waiting.
I know.
And waiting.
That's why you need to do the double batch.
Yeah, a lot of dishes and time.
Okay, that's why it's nice actually, because you can do the mix and then have it overnight in the fridge. And then you're actually just ready to go, and then you have some nice hot cinnamon buns for breakfast if you get up early. Okay. Is everybody ready for cream cheese icing?
Question in the chat. a function here. Is can you put the rest of the cinnamon sugar on top while they're proofing again? Oh, like a little sprinkle on top. Nice.
Did you have a lot, Mary Ellen? Like some? Yeah, you can sprinkle on top if you want to. Sure. Or you could save it for cinnamon toast.
I don't want to waste it.
Oh, you can
Put it
add
on there.
you can add some white sugar to it and the butter, and you can have it on your toast. That is delicious. If anybody has ever done that. All right. So here we go. So when you are making a cream cheese icing of any kind, you want to have everything as much as you can at room temperature. So it calls for about 4 ounces of cream cheese. So that's roughly about half of a package. Always get the brick cream cheese. Don't get the whipped one in the tub. This one is actually meant for baking. The other one has air whipped into it. Doesn't quite do the same job. Okay, so I'll pull this up for later. Okay, so I'm going to mix my cream cheese first. And I'm just going to use my paddle attachment. And let's always start on low.
There's a helpful camera tech in there. If they could lift the camera a little bit higher, we're pretty close to the counter.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, and then a little bit back. We're directing apparently a fine feature film. Thank you, Tanya.
Okay, so I'm just going to increase the speed a little bit. I always like to break up my cream cheese first, because if I put my butter and my cream cheese in at the same time, sometimes it can get very lumpy and it's hard to get those cream cheese lumps out. I'm just going to use a spatula. Get that little bit at the bottom. Okay. Okay, perfect. So maybe you can kind of see it's nice and smooth there. Okay, so now let's add in our butter. With cream cheese icing, you never want to beat on high. Sometimes when you have it on high, what happens is it doesn't quite get thick enough, and then you end up with a really runny icing. And cream cheese icing is really hard to fix once you've done that. You can add more icing sugar, but then it gets really, really sweet. Sometimes you can add some xanthemum gum. Okay, so it's just on low. So I'm going to put in my vanilla. Okay. And then I'm going to put in my icing sugar. If you ever need to thin out an icing, you can do that by adding a little bit of cream. I like to put in 35% cream because the water content is quite low. So I'm just going to put this to medium. Give this a scrape down. See, I've got a little bit of butter bits in mine. Okay. Some people like to use a whisk. Maybe I'll show you. I'll show you what's on high. Okay, so I'll show you what happens when you go on high. It's okay for cinnamon buns, but I would not recommend it for a cake. So you can kind of see how it's not very stiff, right? So if you were making a cake, then this would not be the right consistency.
Chef, is there an easier way to make frosting for cinnamon buns?
I think that this is pretty simple.
It's just a question in the chat. I think
Icing
maybe Tracy from home is not loving the big mess from the mixing bowl.
Yes, Tanya, that's a good idea. Is this icing, sugar, and milk?
Icing, sugar, and milk.
It's
Hope that helps.
more like a glaze.
Ah, her sister wants to do it by hand. So that would make sense, yeah. You don't have to bring out the hardware.
You can do it by hand. I would just use a spatula or a wooden spoon. Okay. So I've got some spots in mine. All right, mine's not looking perfect, guys. But that's okay, because it's still gonna taste good. Okay.
Mary Ellen, your question, will half and half be better than 1%
For
Is
the
that-
icing,
for the icing?
yeah, I would use cream. Okay, so when you're looking at your cinnamon buns, you just want to always check the inside. So you can just kind of peek into a little corner here, and you can see that it's nicely baked on the inside, okay? If you see that it's a little bit gooey, that's when you need to put it back into the oven, okay? When you're checking the first time, okay? But usually around 20 to 25 minutes is all you need. Okay, so then when you are icing your cinnamon buns, you don't want to ice them right when they come out of the oven, right? Because the cream cheese is going to melt all over the place. So then you can either use a spoon, a spatula, a spreader, whatever you like, and then you can just smear it right on.
So Chef, how long should you be waiting? Because obviously people want to get their warm cinnamon buns, but they don't want to have it melty in
I would wait at least 10 minutes.
at least 10 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes. But even then, you'll still have the cream cheese icing will still melt. Like even ours is still melting a little bit, and they've been out for about good 10, 15 minutes.
So as you're spreading this on, do you want to tell everyone what we're making next week?
Ooh, so next week we are switching to savory. So next week we are going to make pierogies. Kylie?
Kylie is, that's the energy that we were missing for sure.
So next week we're gonna do a potato and cheese pierogi. Okay, and these will be great because they can go into the freezer for later, or you can cook them up for dinner. Okay.
She's happy.
It's there again, those are a lot of work. So if you're gonna be joining next week, make sure you have your potatoes already cooked and ready to go, okay? But we will, we'll have the recipe up before, well, usually on Monday, so that you can see what's gonna be involved there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are we going traditional? Like, are we going to have like, is it just potato and cheese filling or just potato?
I think we'll do potato and cheese.
Okay.
I personally love the ones with sauerkraut, but
I was
it's
going to
it's
say,
not
yeah,
everyone's fave.
Me too.
we could do a sauerkraut maybe on the side.
That's right. That's a good one. Does anybody have any questions about their cinnamon buns?
Do they freeze okay, Laura? Chef Laura?
Yes, so before you rise, so put them in your pan. So like this. Okay, So just put them into the freezer just like this.
And what if they're already cooked?
You can, yep, you can cook them and have them in the freezer. Just pull them out and you can heat them up in the microwave or throw them back in the oven at 350. But yeah, if you want your house to smell lovely again, then you can always bake from, well, you thaw them first and bring to room temperature. Yeah.
There's a gluten-free bakery close to my home that they sell cinnamon buns. The only thing I find is when I microwave them, the icing pretty much becomes like a dip,
Yeah.
which is still delicious, but
Just doing a little lick off the plate.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, if you were going to be, putting them in the freezer, I would suggest no cream cheese frosting. Just straight up.
Do it after.
And cream cheese icing can also go in the freezer into a Ziploc bag or an airtight container. So
Chef,
that,
I barely noticed the time sneak away from us. This was a longer recipe. I see we're almost at quarter after.
I know.
Does anyone have any questions for Chef Laura before we let her go finish this batch for the kind folks here? Seeing no questions. Okay, well, as always, feel free to write any more recipe suggestions in the chat. Otherwise, we'll let everyone go enjoy this beautiful Wednesday evening, and hopefully next week you'll join us for, what is it, the Polish called peteher for pierogis.
yes.
Peteher. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, and Tracy, I saw you. Thank you for that kind comment for Chef. And if are you guys open for the season yet, Tracy? Hippie Pops? I know you're only using the chat, and I feel bad. You probably have like primo. Not yet. Okay. Well, whenever Hippie Pops open, we'll make sure to patronize Hippie Pops. I know you guys were on Uber Eats or something before, so hopefully folks will decide to support local, as we are going to be home for a few more weeks.
Absolutely.
All right, guys.
Yes, the
Sangria ones are awesome. Perfect.
They are very good.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank you
And
for teaching us.
Oh, you're welcome.
that's very
Taylor.
nice. Thank you.
Aw, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, girls.
Chef, you're the host tonight, so you actually have to end the meeting on your end.
Okay.
Bye, Chef Laura.
Bye, Mary Ellen. Bye, Sarah.